Hello and welcome to the Choralosophy Podcast. This is episode 119. Yes, middle schoolers can, with Dale Duncan. In this episode, I sit down with the middle school choir guru, Dale Duncan, to talk about the sweet spot for success in middle school vocal music. Middle school singers are often overlooked and underestimated, but what they need is an educator that believes in them and provides high quality instruction, but is also interested in them and is in a school that supports them. The list is long, but there are certain parts of that you can control. We talk about the balance between high expectations, trust building, pitch matching in puberty, motivation of middle schoolers, connection and belonging, and how all of these things serve each other within a high-functioning middle school choir classroom. Dale also shares a bit about what it's like to be retired, his favorite things about teaching middle school, as well as talks about some of its challenges, and we ranged a bit into other areas too, like pre- and post-pandemic choral music and education, and some of the changes that we have seen, as well as why year 20 to 30 as a teacher could be your prime years. So I'm going to suggest that if you have not yet gotten your kids signed up for their Sight Reading Factory memberships individually, now is the time. As you know from some of my episodes on literacy, one of the things that we do that's still a little bit unique out there in high school music ed is requiring each student to take part of their final exam as an individual sight singing evaluation. If you want to see how we do that, you can go back to episode 69. But those individual accounts are really important to allowing them to study and prepare their final exam. So give it a shot. I think you will like how that feels, and you will like how the progress of your choir starts to take shape when every single singer starts to believe that they can contribute in that way. So head over to sightreadingfactory.com and enter Choralosophy at checkout when you order all of your students their accounts. So I've been telling you for a while about the Patreon growth in July, but August was even more. It's just crazy. We are about to crack 150 over there, which that means 150 subscribers who not only listen to this show, which is free, by the way, but they're also willing to chip in $3 a month or more over there to get some extra content, but also to help underwrite the cost of the show. All right, everybody, I'm here with Dale Duncan. Dale Duncan is, of course, choir famous for being the S cubed guy. He's also a middle school choir teacher and has been for a long time. And in a lot of ways, I look at Dale and I think of middle school choir guru. And so I'm excited to talk to Dale about what that's like, but then also just what his life has been like over the last few years. So Dale, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I'm excited to be here.
This will be fun. So the first thing I'm interested in you just kind of diving in to explain to my audience, in case they don't know who the S Cube guy is, or this middle school choir, important figure that we all look up to. Where do you come from, and what led you to do what you do? Give us your backstory.
I'm from Durham, North Carolina, and I went to school at University of North Carolina at Greensboro, where I got my music degrees. And I started my career there in 1989, teaching at Allen Middle School. And I wasn't supposed to be a middle school teacher. I was supposed to be a high school teacher. When I got my student teaching assignment, it was at a high school in Greensboro, and the day before that was to begin, I got a call from the supervisor saying, "You're going to be at Allen Middle School," which is where I ended up teaching. And I was devastated. I was not supposed to be a middle school person, but that was the universe doing its thing. And so I student taught there. And then I finished, I did some master's work and sang on a cruise ship. And then when I came back, the teacher that had been my cooperating teacher became a principal, and I got that job. And so that was the start of my career. I taught there for a few years, and I don't know if people know this in the music world, but I also have this whole hobby on steroids called aerobic gymnastics, and I started competing in that during those first few years, and was fortunate enough to win a national championship, and almost got derailed from teaching during that time, but got right back on the track. Taught in New Jersey for a while, and then in Atlanta, where I started to create and present the S Cubed program, but mostly I made a vow in those first few years at Allen Middle School when I was failing miserably every day, that if I ever figured out how to do the middle school thing, I was going to share it. Now, this was in 1989, 1991. There was no YouTube. There was no anything like we have now. But I didn't know how I would share it, but I just knew that I would. And then around 2013, I was like, I'm just going to set my phone in the corner and record myself doing this thing, and then make some PowerPoints and see if people can use it. And that's how S Cubed happened. And I certainly have lots more about me than sight singing, but that's the thing that I guess people know me for. So, and I'm super grateful for everybody who supports that. And thanks for mentioning it.
Yeah, no, of course. One of the things that I actually have two questions about your story there, and we'll kind of go, I think, go here first, which is that you mentioned that at first you were supposed to be a high school choir teacher, and when you found out that that was the middle school thing, you were devastated. Um, about how long into middle school teaching was that devastation gone? In other words, what was there a story, a moment, or just a gradual thing where you fell in love with it?
Definitely wasn't the first year.
Yeah,
That was
right.
miserable. And I think it changed for me. I mentioned aerobic gymnastics a moment ago. I was in the third year of teaching is when I won the national championship, and I left teaching for 1 year to travel with aerobics around the country, and we were little minor celebrities in that sport, and I missed it a lot, and I couldn't wait to get back. And I think that was when it started to turn. But in year four, that was the year after, I really something started to shift, definitely. And then I moved to New Jersey in year six, and I saw a middle school teacher whose name I cannot remember now because that was so long ago. But at an adjudication event with her kids, she had like 100 of them, and they sounded amazing. And I sat in my chair with my kids, and I was like thinking to myself, that's how they can sound. That's what they can do. And I just reset the bar just from that. And I went up to her and asked her if I could come watch her. And she was like, sure. And I used to take time out, sick days, to go watch teachers because I feel like that's the best way to learn. And that's part of why I shared S cubed with just setting my iPhone 4 in the corner, because I always wanted to watch teachers. And it doesn't mean that I was doing it the right way, whatever that is. It just means that you get to see that person and go, oh, well, that's a way. And and let me try it this way. And then it makes you have ideas. And that's what I got from her and many, many other teachers. And I did that for several years. And all through that time, I would just come back the next day and be excited. Sometimes I would learn what I didn't want to do. But mostly I learned what I wanted to do, or it would just make me think of new things and new ways. And so it was probably in those first 4 to 7 years that it shifted. And then I tried high school for 1 year, 2001. I thought I wanted to be a high school teacher and give it a go. And I was in New Jersey, and that was when 9/11 happened, and we could see the buildings from there. And that was, I think that traumatized me, and that whole year was just really terrible because of that, and all these
Hmm.
kids and their families were affected. And so I wanted to get back to middle school. So we moved to Atlanta. That's where I knew I wanted to be, and I wanted to be for the rest of my career. So, and it's
Yeah.
so ironic because in my youth as a middle schooler, it was the worst period of my entire life. And so I never wanted to go back there. And I was like, the universe is putting me back here in this horrible place. But in hindsight, it was exactly where I was supposed to be, obviously.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you also mentioned that there's so much more to you than just the teaching of literacy to middle school kids. And I do want to talk about that other that is all that other stuff that there is to Dale Duncan. However, I do want to highlight this because one of the things that I run into a lot, and I want to see what you think about this, and you've got so much experience in that age group, is that because of course I talk about literacy a lot on my show too, and I talk about how I teach it and the kind of peculiar approach that I take to getting kids to do it and to do it really well. And one of the things that I get a lot from listeners is, well, yeah, but I teach middle school kids. And what they mean by that is, well, it's cool that your ninth graders can do that, but like there's this magic cutoff where eighth and seventh and sixth graders can't do that stuff. And I'm like, no, no, like
They
you might,
can.
they absolutely can. And you might not give them the
And
same difficulty level that I'm giving them, but they can absolutely do it. So talk about that. And if have you ever come across that attitude in your world too?
well, I don't, yes, I have. The short answer is yes, but I think it's because it's so difficult to when you get beginners in sixth grade who've had elementary music for twice a week maybe for all those years. You are really dealing with the true beginners, and that's why I created S Cubed, is because that's all I ever got. I kept waiting for the Mozarts to walk in the door, and they never did. So I figured that I had to figure out how to get these points across to them. And as I figured it out over the years, because I mean, trust me, before I figured S Cubed out, I had so many moments of failure, so many times when I would say, pull out the sight singing books, and the kids would moan because I did not know what I was doing. I didn't know how to get it across to them. But what I learned was, if you just, being a former gymnast, everything is in layers. You don't move from a level one until you've mastered the skills. And then you move to level two, and then you move to level three when you master the skills. And I built S Cubed in that manner because most of us have beginners. And if you follow that, I mean, it's not like it takes forever to master those skills. It's just that you have to really, deal with those and help them learn to do things through their sight, through their ears, and through their hands, the kinesthetic, the oral, the visual, one step at a time. And you can't skip steps. I got an email the other day from a person who teaches middle and high, and she had just purchased S Cube, and she was like, well, I'm going to just jump into level two with my high schoolers. I'm like, no, don't do that. Like, if you've already got your own way with your high schoolers, then just stick to that. You're building a foundational set of skills that you can't skip. And if you're going to do it, you have to commit to it. And if you're not, and you have your own way, then do that, because there are tons of ways to do this, right? I mean, there's not just one. Mine is not the only one that works. I've just found things that do, and I used it for years, and I have watched it work, and I watched their brains awaken day after day after day, and I love doing that. Even though I did decide to retire, I loved it during all those times. So it was
Right.
awesome.
Now, after you retired, after how many total years then in the classroom? You might have said
30
that.
years,
30
30
years.
years in public school. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was not an easy decision. I hadn't planned. The pandemic helped me decide.
Yep.
Those last few years,
Uh-huh.
I planned to go a bit longer, but it just, I those last years, as we all know, were so hard for us pivoting, and some of the joy was not there. And this last school year, and that ended with 2022, I was getting the joy back, and I wanted to feel that joy one more time. And I got, my other passion is musical theater, and my kids, we did a great show at the end of the year, and I got to go out on a high note, and I loved getting to do that. And I got to rebuild their sight singing skills so that the next teacher could hopefully have some foundational things to use. Yeah, it was not, but I'm not done. Retired for me is like, I mean, I've already been to Missouri and done their honors course this summer, Oklahoma, and taught some teachers. I'm going to Iowa coming up, Nebraska. I have several honors courses coming up. I think I'm going to end up teaching online for all school or out school or something, part-time. But it's the best part is having the control to be able to do it the way I want to do it when I want to do it,
Yeah.
and that's something I'm very excited and loving.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you say the pandemic kind of helped you decide. For me, I'm a few years behind you in that process, but the pandemic helped me start thinking about when I could retire for the very first time in my career.
Yeah.
I just never thought about it. I'd gone, let's see, this is year 20 for me. So but think, maybe 16, year 17, the pandemic starts, right?
Yeah.
And I was that far into my career and I hadn't even thought about it.
Yeah.
I was having so much fun. And then the pandemic happens and I'm like, okay, how to counting years? Can I buy years? Like how to,
No, you're going to get it back though, because like I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, this is such a tricky subject, but we all in our careers face so many various obstacles, right? I mean, every year there are new obstacles that we have to overcome. And those are not as big as the pandemic was, but there are always some. And so every time I would face whatever those new obstacles were, I kept focused on the kids. It's their first, and we have to figure it out for them. And we have our own stuff going on, but that's what we have to do. So my attitude from the very beginning, March 2020, was this is temporary. And I knew it was temporary. I mean, it's definitely changed the world, right? And in ways that are amazing and awful in some ways, but mostly just new ways of thinking that we never could have imagined, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
But what we all had to go through as choral music educators was awful and trying and stressful. But I kept saying to myself, this is temporary. And how am I going to find a solution? Like that first year, 2020 to 2021, I was determined to do a show for my kids, some kind of show. And we couldn't we weren't even in person, right? And every day I woke up with the person who worked with me on the shows, and I said, today, this is the new rule. These are the new rules. And what are we going to do to make sure that this show happens? And the show, we decided in December of 2020 that it was going to be a video. And I'd never done a video. And I was like, so I don't know what this is going to look like or where we're going to meet. It's going to be filmed in parking lots or wherever we can do it. And we did it. And and I remember when I watched that video, I wasn't even sure it was going to end up being finished. It's honestly the thing I'm most proud about in my career, that we got that done. And I watched it on Mother's Day of 2021, the final product. After having watched it with the production team, I watched it by myself instead of looking at it from, we have to edit here, or we should have done that, or we should have done that. I just watched it with myself. And my mom had been on, she passed away in 2006. And I just, she just came to me. And as I'm watching it, I just started crying, and I was so overwhelmed that we'd gotten it done. And it was magical to me that we were able to do that. And that's the thing throughout my career that I've always known. The kids have to have us finish things. They have to have us there for them. They have to be the focus at all times. And whatever those obstacles are, we just have to we have to figure them out. That's been my philosophy all the time, and it always will be.
Yeah, no, that's really beautiful. That's very eloquently put. I know for me, you mentioned I would get it back, and I feel like this year I've already kind of got it back. You know, it's so normal. That this school year feels very normal, and the kids I've noticed are hungry. Like they are
Yeah,
hungry to learn and have a normal experience too. And you're exactly
they
right.
need
Like
it
they
so
need it.
much.
They need it. Yeah, it's not a fluff like it's not an extra thing. It's like something that they really need for their mental health, for their social development, and all of those things. And it's been fun to see that.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. And I'm hearing that from other teachers as well. Like being in Missouri this summer and conducting that ACDA, it felt normal.
Hmm.
And and for me, like when I was conducting it, I was just, that we did the musical last year, and that felt normal. But that's different than the choral art, right? You know, when you're doing choral music with kids and you're having these beautiful crescendos and you're feeling like the goosebumps were coming and coming and coming, and it was just so magical.
Hmm.
And my family and friends are like, do you miss it on the daily? And I'm like, no, actually I don't. And I'm looking forward to those experiences that I'll get through honors courses and things like that. But I'm happy for the teachers. I'm happy for the students like you who are starting to feel those things. Because I said this to my kids for years, and I will say it until I die. It's a Maya Angelou quote: people forget what you say, they forget what you do, but they don't forget how you make them feel.
Hmm.
And these students have been deprived of those feelings, and now hopefully they're going to continue to have more opportunities this
Yeah.
year and next year to get them back.
Yeah, and I'll share a little brief story before we move to the next topic because I think that it would highlight this what you just said really well. And the last April, my high school choir, our advanced group, got to go to, it was mostly juniors and seniors, got to go to New York and sing at Carnegie, and
Uh,
it was kind of right. You know, we signed up for that trip, as you can imagine, in April of last year or this current year, I guess. Um, that means that we had to have really committed financially 9 months or so before that. And so the families on that trip, and there were about 60 of them, were committing still in a very uncertain time. Like, is this trip even going to happen? I was getting lots like, are we going to have this get canceled? We're just going to go for this, and we're going to try it. So it ended up being April of that year. And the most impactful, I think, moment, because I'm a parent and a teacher, we did a little dinner cruise after the concert was over, and all the kids are dancing on the boat, and they're just like it's normal kids doing dancing, just doing kid things. And there were good 20 or 25 parents on the trip with us. The impactful thing was watching the parents watch their kids get to have a normal experience for the first time in, 2 or 3 years. And the
Yeah.
tear, like the parents were crying, just watching their kids have fun. Like people need that.
Oh, they do. And good for you for making that happen. I gives me goosebumps again. I remember also, I'm sure you do too, like we as choral directors we have to stick together and we have to support each other. And I remember at the beginning and really for about a year and a half-ish after March 2020, I watched online, Facebook, just choral conductors imploding and
Yep,
attacking each other. And it was just so dark and horrible and awful to watch. And I think everybody was just struggling so much with their own anxiety and the uncertainties. And I get it. But when you've taught for as long as I have taught, and now as long as you have really too, you've seen the hills and the valleys. And if you've been in it as long as we have, that there are going to be some great peaks coming, and I feel like that people are so starved to make beautiful art that some of the best music and art is about to happen ever in the next few years and beyond because of
I agree.
this.
Yep, I agree. I think that it is. I think there's going to be a honeymoon. Actually, that's my prediction. I think there's going to be a honeymoon in the next couple of years where it is like really amazing stuff happening. But I do think that in 3 or 4 years, I've made this joke for a few months, where the kids are going to start taking us for granted again. In
Yeah.
like in 2 or 3 years, they're going to come through and it's going to be old hat again, and we're going to have to pull out all of our classroom management things we had to do before, and all of our motivational tricks that we had to do
Yep.
before. You
Yep.
know, it's human nature. Human nature.
It is. It is
Yeah.
100%.
Let's talk about middle school choir a little bit, like a little bit into the weeds of it. So, did you primarily teach 6 through 8 buildings?
Yes.
Okay, so that's middle school where you are.
Yes. Middle school where I am is six
Okay,
through eight.
got it.
In elementary, I had 5 through 8 for a short time, but yeah.
Yeah. So let's start this way. Why did you love middle school? What do you tell us about what it was if once you fell in love with it, about that age group that really made it feel special to you and as a career calling? If your school or church are in the market for staging products like risers, shells, podiums, movable platforms, all of the things that you need to set your choir up for success, I would like to strongly urge you to check out StageRight. StageRight's products are sturdy, they're durable, they're easy to use. I have personal experience with the acoustical shells and some of the platforms that they have at StageRight, and I can tell you, compared to some of the more expensive competitors, they are a really great option to fit inside of a tight school budget, but also to give you the durability and usability that you need. So check out StageRight at stageright.com.
They once they know who you are as a human, once they know that you care about them, once you build the trust with them that you know what you're doing, they are so loyal to you. They will give as much as they can, even if they're just not like that particularly talented. They want to do well for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I also love that they're not, a lot of them haven't found any sort of passion in their lives yet, and they're just kind of wandering through their lives and that kind of blank look in their face. And you, as a middle school teacher, have the opportunity to excite them about some stuff for the first time that isn't a video game, or that isn't something that they do get excited about, that's really has nothing to do with art or humanity or the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved that more than anything once I figured that out. And in that year that I taught high school, I told you it was like during the 9/11 year, which I don't think that really counts because of where I lived and the whole thing. But high school kids they have 100 things to do, and they're building their college resumes. And I never felt in that year, and it could have been 9/11, but that they really, and it was the school that I fed to, so they already knew me, but I didn't feel that commitment that I'm able, and I had been able to get from all of my middle school kids that I loved. They would just bring everything possible at the really important moments, and they were so grateful. I think because they hadn't had experiences like the ones that I was able to give them, and that
Mm-hmm.
middle school teachers who really bring their souls. Like I poured my soul into that job, and and I don't ever need to do that again that way. But
Hmm.
I don't regret it a bit, and I'm thankful for doing it, and for all that it's brought me. But because I did that, and they know it, they were so loyal and so good and so hardworking, and that
Yeah.
meant a lot. Yeah.
No, that's really awesome. You said poured your soul into it, and I understand what that means. I feel like I feel that way too about my job. However, I'm just curious because the way you said it, were there ever moments where you felt like you poured too much in? In other words, where you went too far for your own mental health and work-life balance? Did you ever struggle with that?
Oh yeah. I mean, there were times, I mean, you have children, right? And
Yep.
I have a husband, but I don't have children. And when you have children, I think it's extra difficult for people like you who give so much to your profession, to find that balance of your work and your life. All I had to do, I mean, sometimes I didn't spend as much time with my husband as I should. I wouldn't take time off, because I was like, I have these times to be in school I don't want to miss, right? I have summer, and summer is summer, and holiday is holiday. And I'm loving this moment in my life because I'm not doing that, but I did so hard. And even like when the pandemic hit, I'm in year 28 at that point, and I still obsessed about making sure that I was doing my best for those kids, right? Like I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. I've never done this before. I've never done an ed puzzle in my life, but I'm figuring it out today. And here we go, because this is how I've got to evaluate them. All the things I needed to do to try to do what we do. And I know
Hmm.
you know the same. And then when I wasn't working on it, I was thinking about it because that's just how I did for my job. And so, yes, my mental health definitely took some suffering, and especially in the pandemic. And that's honestly in December of last year when I decided to retire. I knew the moment. There was an email from the district, and I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this for 2 or 3 or 4 more January, February, Marches. I can't do it.
Yeah.
And I knew I could do it for one, but with the pandemic, how it shifted and how it kept coming and going and coming and going, like the
Hmm.
variants. I just knew I could do it one, and I could knock it out of the park, but I couldn't face the possibility of a January 23, and I'm so glad I made that decision. But I was literally at my wit's end, and I had to, ever since then, I feel like I'm just peeling off the layers, and I'm getting to know who I really am again. And I am all of that. That's a part of who I am, but I'm also all of these other things. And I'm loving rediscovering that.
Yeah, that's wonderful, and I probably a year ago I would have said I was jealous, and I wish I could follow you out the door. Although, like I said, I'm having so much fun this year that
I'm happy to hear
I'm ready I'm ready to put like dig down. It's almost like I'm thinking of it now as like a second career. It's like the pre-pandemic career, and then the after the pandemic career.
That's a wonderful way to look at it. And you're going to do it. I mean, you're at year 20, and from year 20 to year 30 is when I did my very, very best work. Now, there was no pandemic on that side of it, but I had a year off in there for personal reasons. And when I came back, I was like 10 years, and I didn't know it would be that, but it was
Yeah.
12 actually. But still, that you're in your go for it, make
Now,
your mark. You already made.
what do you think causes that? So, like, what is it about that time in your career? Do you have theories about why teachers, apart from the obvious, which is experience, is there a sweet spot in that year 20 to 30 that you think that allows teachers to do their best?
It was for me.
Hmm.
I Joe and I moved to Switzerland for his job. I knew that was a terrible place to live, right? Wonderful place to live, but I was off for a year that year. And during that year, I wasn't working, and I am very grateful for that year because that's the year I was writing a book called S Cubed.
Mm.
And I would write a book called S Cubed, and then I would go hike or whatever. And I would write a book. And then I came home and I was fortunate enough to get the job that I had before I left because the teacher that replaced me retired. And so I got to continue what I had begun at Henderson. And so in 2010, the program was kind of in disarray. In 2011, I felt like it was fixed. And then in 2012, I started building S Cubed. And that is when I made, I felt confident as a choral conductor because I'd done all of those adjudications. I'd gotten all of that feedback, which is so incredibly helpful. I can't emphasize enough how much that impacted me as a choral conductor and teacher. I'd watched all of those teachers. I would take time off to do. And now we had YouTube and I could watch teachers online, right? Like, it was starting to happen. And I just feel like I was ready and I was hungrier than ever. Even though I had done some wonderful things before, I felt like I 100% understood classroom management, working with parents. It's just that spot that you're in when you're confident in what you're doing. Yeah. So that's where you're headed.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you
I'm
are.
excited. I'm excited. Now
Yeah.
it's funny that you lived in Switzerland. I don't know if you remember this, but I missed you in Missouri because I was in Switzerland.
I
So,
did not know that.
yeah, so I had to miss the Missouri convention because I had an opportunity to go with my whole family, my wife and two kids for 2 weeks to Switzerland.
That is amazing. Where'd you go?
Yeah, so we stayed in Geneva, and my aunt and uncle lived there, and but they were in the U.S. for the summer, so their apartment condo was empty, 2 blocks from the UN, and so we just stayed there in their house for 2 weeks.
That's amazing. I lived in
Yeah.
Lausanne, which is really close to
Yep.
Geneva,
Yeah.
and it just did. The whole country is so small, and I would go everywhere. And yeah, it was magical. But it was also, yeah, not everybody gets those kind of breaks, right? I mean,
Right.
like those break. I had it when I won nationals in aerobics. I took that year, and then uh, I took the Swiss year, and those are cleansing moments.
I
It's like when
bet.
I decided to retire, my dad said to me, "You're not retiring." I'm like, "Dad, I'm not retiring. I'm retiring from teaching right now, teaching 5 days a week." But when you open up that space in your world, if you have that opportunity, and not everybody does, it just gives you so much clarity. And that's right now, I feel like I have that clarity, and I'm very excited about what's coming, whatever that is. And every time I get a chance to work with kids, I feel like I'm going to soak it up in new ways. It's a very exciting period. But did you love Switzerland?
Oh, it was incredible. I'd been there before since my aunt lives there, but I hadn't been since I was a teenager, so it'd been 20 something years,
Yeah.
and but yeah, it's incredible. It's like you're right. It's magical. It's like Disney made it. Like the whole country.
Yeah.
It's like Disney made it.
It
Yeah,
is.
it's pretty. Like I was joking with my cousin who still lives there, and I said, "So there are no poor people here in Switzerland, are there?" And he's like, "I mean, not really. I mean, there kind of are, but not really. Not like you guys
Not
have."
many.
Yeah, no, for
Yeah.
sure. Not for sure. Yeah, that's for sure. That's funny. Okay, so let's talk about we talked about some awesome, very rose-colored glasses, wonderful things about middle schoolers. Let's talk about the challenges and what you think are the unique challenges that choir directors who are in that middle school 6 to 8 range, what they face. So let's put it in two categories, if you could. The challenges of the age group, maybe cognitively, mentally, emotionally.
Hmm.
What is it you're dealing with? And then, of course, the voice.
Yeah.
Let's talk a
Yeah.
little bit about some of those things. And I don't care which order you go in, just feel free to reflect on some of those challenges.
Cognitively, let's do that. From sixth to eighth grade, the change is immense cognitively and physically, obviously. What they need in sixth grade is so completely different than what they need in eighth grade. From how it's presented to what they can get to how much structure is required to be successful in a given activity. You boys, like I split by gender in seventh grade, usually, and boys, I could have 30 boys in a class of seventh grade, and then I could have 80 girls, and I would work 5 times harder in the boys class than the
Yep.
girls class. And it's just, they are just at a different place of maturity. And it's not that they're bad. It's not that at all. It's just that they need it to be different. They need to move. They're just in a different space. And so teachers who are fortunate enough in middle school to attract boys to their program, that is a huge challenge. At the same time, it's also a huge reward, if you can get it worked out, right? And in terms of vocal, in sixth, or let's talk about the treble voices in sixth grade. In S cubed, we attack the ear very quickly. If you can get their ear, because they want to sing sharp, right? In sixth grade and seventh grade too, and eighth grade if you haven't fixed it. But if you can get that in check in sixth grade really early, you can solve a lot of things that will help you have a beautiful sounding eighth grade choir. And that goes for all the singers, treble and non-treble. But the changing voice, male voice, obviously everybody knows that's a huge challenge. You get a variety of levels of physical maturity in seventh grade. So when I split them in seventh grade, I still had some boys who were the soprano, and if they wanted to be in my treble choir, I certainly would always allow them to do that and encourage them to do that. And if they didn't, I would have to, the range was basically F below middle C. And the little treble kids could go way on up, and the kids whose voices hadn't changed were, or had changed, some were going to struggle around E above middle C if they could get that out, depending on where their voice was. They leave in December, the seventh and eighth grade voice, they sound one way, they come back in January, and it's all the way down, and it's just constantly going. Everybody's dealt with it. And with the boys, I've done many videos on YouTube and have blogged about it a lot. I always try to find wherever their voice is, right? And I sing Soul Me Soul, wherever that is, so that they can feel and experience what it means and feels like to match the pitch. Because if you let them drone down, their musculature just starts to remember that that's how it's supposed to feel to sing, and it's not how it's supposed to feel to sing. And you have to help them expand from that space where they can actually match the pitches, and help them with the breath and other things to start to expand and stretch that voice out. Those struggles are real, and they never go away if you teach middle school, but you become an expert at it with time. I think a lot of times I hear from women who teach middle school and how they struggle with middle school, the changing voice. Some things that I always suggest to them to do if they can't, to actually match it themselves, because it does matter to hear human match it, not just the piano, is to find a male who is doing it correctly and have that kid with the other kid. Or to have a professional singer from your community come in who's, could be a good example so they can hear it. I know it's a little trickier for females to deal with that, but many female choral directors in our community in this country and beyond are doing a great job with it. So reaching out to your peers, asking what they're doing is always a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm good. I'm going down to our middle school on Thursday to work with the group for the first time this year, to introduce myself and also to help with that very thing, because you're right. Sometimes just having a male demonstrator for the boys, I can get certain things for them to happen in 30 seconds that a female teacher sometimes would have trouble in 30 days doing.
Yes,
And
exactly.
because it's just, they can hear it with all of the kind of the overtone complexity of the human voice, which is so different than just playing on the piano. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
I do want to go back to something you said, because I wasn't sure exactly what you meant, because I don't work with this age group. But you said something earlier about sixth and seventh graders want to sing sharp.
Mhm.
Why?
I think they're not used to using their head voice. Like in elementary school, sometimes they just let them sing in their chest voice. I mean, not everybody. I mean, there are some great elementary teachers out there, but they don't get as much time with the kids, right? And we
Right.
talked about that earlier in this meeting that we're having here. They don't get as much time. So when they come to you, if they were seeing me 5 days a week, right? And I immediately pop them into that head voice, right? And help them learn to use it. And because the musculature is not used to it, right? They just sing and they haven't learned to listen and sing, right? They haven't learned the art of self-correction, right? Self-assessment. Those are the things that I emphasize in S cubed in lesson 3 and beyond. It's like there's a constant ear training component to our teaching, not just in the repertoire, but in your sight singing. If you're letting the kids, sing that mi fa sharp, and you're not teaching them about it, they're just going to keep doing it, and it becomes a habit. It's like walking around with a hunchback. Your muscles begin to remember that's your posture, and that's how you do.
Yeah.
And so you have to jump in on that and get it. When I had my kids, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, in sixth grade, if you had a bullseye of pitch, you're going to see just, like 5 fingers plus of different pitch. They're not quite in the bullseye. Many of them are, but not everybody is. And then by 7th grade, but like by the end of 6th grade, you can usually get that choir, all in the center on the same pitch, and instead of 72 versions of what do is supposed to be. But you have to really emphasize that early, because you're helping them break those habits and self-assess and self-correct quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting because I think that a lot of that carries into high school too, where I've got a theory kind of going that most kids, I hesitate to say all with anything, but most kids are able to hear pitches pretty well in tune in their brain. It's only when they start to sing that registration things usually causes them, like problems with registration cause them to sing out of tune. And then the way I phrase it is that then their brain starts to believe their body, and
Yeah,
then it doesn't get corrected. So they assume that whatever sound they hear is the correct one, and then they lose track of what they're hearing in their head. But
right.
yeah, it's interesting because that definitely continues through puberty. You're Because you mentioned if they don't aren't taught early on in 6th and 7th grade how to correct that problem
Right.
themselves. Is that kind of your
Right.
experience?
Well, yeah, or to acknowledge it. Like at the beginning of the year, I mean, I find a pitch on the piano, like G or something, and I'll just bang it on the piano, and I'll sing do, and I'm not on a G, but like I'll just sing it, and then I'll sing sharp, and I'll ask them if they're noticing, and they're like, no, don't do it, and they all notice, right? And they just go crazy, and then I'll do it, and I'll sing flat, and I'm pointing to the bullseye on the board and helping them to recognize me when I'm out of tune. That's step one, right?
Mhm.
And then we gradually over time, but it takes time. I mean, just helping them to learn that they also did sing sharp and or flat or out of tune. And it does take time. It's like that babies don't walk just because we put them on their legs, right? They have to build the musculature, and it takes time
Right.
and persistence.
Yeah, no, that's good. So as you've got, and because these are all really good thoughts, and I think that they will be helpful to people as we kind of think about that age group. And I know a lot of people in our profession, maybe they teach 6 through 12, or we have people who
Mhm.
do K through 12. And I can't imagine doing K through 12, but we
No.
have colleagues that do it,
Yes.
and some that do it really, really well. And so to me, I kind of think about all the things you're saying, and of course I'm immediately filtering it into my high school world, where a lot of these things are the same. Like the concepts are the same. We're just at almost like you're working with violins in 6th grade, and I've got violas in ninth grade, and that kind of thing. There's a lot of those things that are just growing. But it's an interesting thing just to think about, like the advice you're giving and how much transfer it would have. And so that kind of leads me into my next question anyway, which is great because I was thinking about now that you are retired, and you've already been doing your blogging and your S cubed stuff as a way to reach out, and as you said from your beginning of your career, share these things that work.
Mhm.
It does. Do you think of How do you think of your role now that you're retired as a teacher of teachers? Is that something that you have always been passionate about, or do you feel like you're diving into that with a new vigor now that you're retired?
I don't know if I'm diving into it with a new vigor, but I certainly, any opportunity that presents itself to me to help other teachers, I'm always going to do it, because like it's the misery that I felt from years 1, 2, and 3. I felt so alone, so much like a failure. And I was. I mean, I remember my first adjudication. I took the kids, and I just followed this great teacher, and she was superior, superior, superior. We got a good, and the kids, I was devastated. We go and get on the bus, and this child, her name, I won't say, but she was trying. She's now at 50, but she was like, we did good, Mr. Duncan, and she was trying to make me laugh, because she was,
Hmm.
and she did. And I'll never forget that. But I just knew, like, in those moments, as I said earlier, if I ever figured it out, I was going to help. And so I'm going to continue to blog. I'm going to continue to get on my YouTube and put a thing up when I think of something that I think can help teachers. I've certainly put out so much material, blogging and YouTube. that people can just go into a rabbit hole with a bottle of wine or whatever anytime, and they can dismiss it if they want, and it's fine, or they can learn from one little kernel of something. I'm never going to stop doing that. Never.
Right. Wow. Wow. That's such a neat thing, and I wonder too if you ever think about like, uh, almost like, do you ever feel a duty to other people's kids? I don't know if it's a weird question. That feels like a weird question. The reason I ask is that when I hand my students a piece of music, they've never seen it before, and they're really good readers by the time they get to 2 or 3 years into my program. They can pick up any repertoire from anywhere in the world, any time period, and experience it in a day. And
Hmm.
they feel so powerful when they do that. And they
Yeah.
look at me and they feel like I can see their eyes are just like open to a part of the world that I was not open to at that age.
Yeah.
And I feel like, so when I think about that, it's part of how I think about this show, is I want every kid to experience that, not
Yeah.
not just my kids. Do you ever think about stuff like that, or is that just too heady?
No, no, no. As I said earlier, the the kids and their experience, their daily experience in my classroom was the number one thing. And I didn't always hit it out of the park because we're all human, right? But I wanted them to. I felt a huge duty to them. That's why I didn't want to miss school. It's why and when I did, it was either for something really important or because I really needed a mental health break, right? That was, because if I didn't, I wasn't going to be ready for them or on for them the way I needed to be. Definitely felt duty to them. I feel duty to teachers, like people who are when people purchase S cubed, like every question that I get, I always am like, as soon as I can, like if there's something missing that they need, because I know what it's like to be stressed when you are trying
Hmm.
to do your program, and I will never forget that as long as I live. Like those are, I think, one of my major purposes in this life is what I've been doing, and what I'm going to continue to do. And I don't know exactly how that's going to unfold going forward, but I do know that the mission is not going to change.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So I want to I want to wrap this up with one topic, one more topic, although it's still middle school choir related. We talked about some of the vocal challenges, some of the cognitive challenges, some of the things that you loved. Um, is there anything that you would offer kind of on the way out here as maybe the trick or the key to unlocking the middle school personality? I ask that because earlier you said they come to you oftentimes in middle school with still that blank stare.
Hmm.
And I recognize it because I have a child in that age group.
Yeah.
I know what that blank stare looks like. What are some of the things that you've found success with for turning the lights on in their eyes, so to speak?
Mhm.
But even if you had like stories, of course, change the names to protect the innocent. But
Mhm.
do you have any success stories that you could share that kind of highlight how that works with kids that age?
Well, I'll say a few things before I share one particular story. That the the most important thing with middle school students is that they have to know that you care about them. Like I had this little sign on the door with, it's an old sign with different faces, and it was like cartoon faces, and so it would say happy or lonely. How are you feeling today? People have seen this sign. And I would, stop because I would have classes of 85 kids, right? I can't get to know all of those kids the way I would like to if I have that many. But I would stop random kids and say, "Who are you today?" you know uh, and then they would stand and look, and I would have the best conversations with some of those kids in those minutes when they walk in the room, individual conversations that really make a difference with middle school kids. I think with all kids, but like with middle school, you really win them when you take time to care. They want to know you. They want to know your life. And you don't have to be too personal, but they see through you so fast.
Mm-hmm.
I have often said that middle school kids, like they don't understand it always, but they see the world so clearly. And then over from like 14, 15, 16, they start sometimes to put on these blinders and give these incredible benefits of the doubt, which could be a good thing, but sometimes it causes them to put blinders on, that that's part of what attracted me to middle school, is that they see things so clearly. And I know the world is not black and white, but I love how they see it. One of the stories that I really meant a lot to me at the end of my career this past year. There was a child in my 6th grade and that's when COVID happened for her. So I had her in a normal situation until March of 2020. This was a child who never spoke. She was very quiet. She was not a leader. She always worked hard, but she was not a leader. She didn't want to be noticed. And then in 7th grade, we were all online virtually. She didn't come back during that year when we did at the end of the year. She stayed home, never on camera, didn't turn in very little work. I was very worried about this child. Again, and I reached out to her and we talked on Zoom one day, and I think it obviously meant something to her. But then when school came back last year, she was so distant and so far away and so uncomfortable. And I would every day, and she was in my class of 84, I would go over to her and say, how are you doing? And she would very shyly look up at me. And I just kept doing that all year long. And I would try to start conversations. We never really had a conversation, but she knew that I cared about her. And at the end of my very last day of school, I'm sobbing and the kids are leaving. And she comes up to me and she has this piece of paper, and she said, I said, do you want me to look at it now? She said, just read the cover. No, she said, look at the cover, but don't read the inside. And the cover, she had taken my professional headshot, and she had drawn it in pencil. And it was so incredibly beautiful and so accurate. I couldn't believe, I never even knew she could do that. And then she didn't want me to read the inside. But then when I read the inside, it was just like, she said such amazing things about just that she appreciated me noticing her, that she appreciating the things times when I would speak to her and try to talk, even though she wasn't comfortable. She said all of those things in writing and in drawing. And she was not a star of my show. She was not a soloist. She never tried out for a single thing. And she is the reason that I taught all those years. I love all those soloists. I love all those star moments. I love all those great things. But that is the reason I taught. And so when she walked out the door that day, I'm like, okay, that's why I did this. And I love it. Yeah, those are my parting words.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's beautiful. I always say to my kids a lot that I have a very similar conversation with my students, where I love the all-state kid. I love the kid who comes in 9th grade who can already sight read. That's awesome. But I do this job not for that reason. I do that job because for the kid who tries out for the choir 4 years in a row and doesn't make it till their 4th year, but they just keep trying. Or that being in the part of the group is so important to them that they just keep coming back year after year. Like that's what it's all about. So yeah, it sounds like we see that a lot of the same way. Well, Dale, this has been really, really fun and informative, but also interesting. Thank you so much for this conversation, and I think people are going to really enjoy it.
Thank you for the opportunity, and good luck with your next 10 years.
Yes, awesome. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, as always, for sticking around and listening to the end of an episode. Just several reminders on the way out. Use your promo code at mymusicfolders.com, ryanmain.com, graphitepublishing.com, and sightreadingfactory.com every time you check out. In the show notes of the episode, you can find tons of links, including information about Dale, all of my social media, where you can reach me and participate in the conversation, and then, of course, like, share, and last but not least, join the Patreon, patreon.com/choralosophy. Come hang out with us there. We're making a difference in the choral world, and I want you to join me. Thank you so much. See you next time.